thinking it with Scotland, how are we doing on, deal flow internationally? I was reading Silicon Valley Bank making, recent kind of involvement in Scotland. I think it was with maybe one of the CBILS loans or something like that. I was reading in a Scottish travel company. I think it's a Scottish enterprise invested company. Can't remember the name of it, but you might tell me. But how are we doing, with international, equity and investment coming into Scotland?
So we've done, pretty well over the last kind of few years, with an increase in the amount of international capital we've managed to attract into Scotland. And kind of back to the point earlier, just on how accessible that now is, it's going to be quite interesting to see how that changes. We've managed to get, a lot of people paying attention and showing interest in the early stage in particular. The growth in the Scottish early stage market over the past sort of 10 years has been sort of fourfold. So we're achieving significant early stage investment, but we've always kind of struggled a little bit with what's perceived to be a bit of a glass ceiling when it comes on to moving on to that later stage. And that's where we really need to make more of an impact and make sure we've got more companies becoming companies of scale.
Yeah, and just for our kind of viewers, if you like, how would you categorize those different stages?
So certainly from an investment point of view, the early stages is sort of sub 2 million initial investment, with any kind of follow on that goes with that. The sort of 2 to 5 to 10 size and above is where we don't really punch at our weight when it comes to the amount of deals that are happening in Scotland. And we've always tried to look at, well, why is that? We don't think it's to do with the quality of our companies, because we've got some fantastic companies, but there's just so much opportunity for investors in that space. And back to the point on the kind of risk that investors are interested in. So when we've engaged in the London market, frequently investors will say, well, we've got loads of opportunities on our doorstep, mile round radius, there's loads of companies we can look at. Why would we travel up to Scotland? And that's been a kind of real challenge for us, because it's quite difficult to persuade them, other than for one or two companies that really stand out, that it's worth it. Whereas now, with this new remote way of working, as we touched on earlier, the opportunity to engage with investors and to get time they might not otherwise have, to show people that actually, this is how good this company is, this is what our USP is, this is why you should be really interested, is going to be hopefully quite an interesting transformation in that later stage market for us.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I always, kind of realised in my long economic development career was it really didn't matter how well you were doing in absolute terms, because the competition was also trying to move fast and do the same thing. Think about the UK. How are the UK regions doing in this field, and where has kind of new or surprising competition come from regionally?
Yeah, so the regional picture is an interesting one, in that we can struggle to get sufficient data to help us fully understand it. What we have seen is much more co-investment activity happening. So Scotland's always stood out as the first region to undertake co-investment activity, and others across the UK are starting to follow. It's seen very much now as a great way to get that public-private sector activity happening, the sharing of the risk and returns. We've always kind of stood out in Scotland, particularly in the angel market, as we were touching on earlier. Significant amount of angels investing in Scotland, and that's been the case for quite some time. We've got a really efficient and quite a large early stage market that comes from angel investors, and others don't have that. There's been various initiatives underway to try to encourage more of that activity. The UKBEA, the UK Business Angel Association, have done a lot of work alongside the British Business Bank to try and set up hubs of activity to try and encourage some more of that angel investment. And there's an increase in larger deals happening in other regions, the same as in Scotland. We haven't, so far been able to get quite as many of the mega deals as we've seen in the northeast, for example. But we're hoping to see a few more of them coming through later this year, because there's quite a lot of positive activity that we're seeing, quite a lot of investors engaged and looking at some later stage investments. And hopefully with the introduction of a Scottish National Investment Bank in Scotland targeting later stage deals, then hopefully we'll see even more interest in investors looking to see Scotland as a really interesting place to look at those later stage investments.
Yeah, and has it been the case that some of those are just kind of, I suppose, put on ice a little bit, as you know, for people to see what plays out?
It's been interesting that we've actually seen still quite a large number of larger deals overall, both across the UK and actually across in the US as well. What we can't quite work out yet is how much of them have came from kind of pre COVID. So how many are just, have
Yes.
taken kind of just over that period as opposed to new deals. I think it'd be quite challenging to start a new deal in the current environment, a large investment. But with the horizon there of positivity, with vaccine rollout, as we talked about, Brexit, clear that there's still a number of issues that need to be sorted out. It's not kind of quite clear how it's all going to play out, but we're in a better place now than we were, even 3 weeks ago. So that there's progress on understanding the impacts, and I guess all of these major issues that are out there in the economy.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll start to see more large and newer deals happening. I think it'll be a while until we see some of the really early stage deals happening again, and particularly with the external investor base. But part of our role, as you're kind of aware, and hopefully others will be aware, is very much working at how we can leverage further investment into the different stages that need it. And our focus will remain on the really early stage for the time being, given if we don't manage to solve that problem, fill that gap in that pipeline, right up to the the larger deals later, will be a real problem that we'll be facing into in a few years' time.